Okay, so you really weren't kidding about this whole deep dive thing. History, science, economics, a bit of philosophy, all connected by this idea of, like, expanding your worldview, huh?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And what really got me thinking was how it ties into leadership. We always hear about leaders needing charisma or being decisive, but how well they see the world, like really grasp it. I think that's huge.
It's almost like having that wide-angle lens, right, for
It
your
is
mind.
indeed.
Speaking of seeing the world in new ways, Sophie Krantz's work is really what kicked off this deep dive for us. All her research on how seeing more of the world helps us achieve more. Total light bulb moment. And it made me think of Magellan, 500 years ago.
Oh, proving the world was round. That's got to be up there for groundbreaking moments, right? I mean, that voyage alone just busted open what people thought was possible.
Seriously. Imagine how limited everyone felt before that, thinking the world was flat tea.
Talk about a limited worldview.
Makes you wonder what new worlds we're all missing out on, just because our perspective isn't wide enough yet. So that's what we're going to explore today.
Love it. And history gives us so many examples of how powerful shifting perspectives can be.
Right.
Like take the heliocentric theory, for example.
You mean the Earth revolving around the sun, not the other way around. I mean, that seems so obvious now, but
Right. But for centuries, people were dead set that the Earth was the center of everything. It must seem insane, like for Copernicus and Galileo to challenge that whole worldview.
I can only imagine the pushback, like telling everyone, "Yep, your whole understanding of the universe is totally backwards."
Oh, absolutely. People hate having their comfortable worldviews messed with, but shifting from geocentric to heliocentric, that led to huge leaps forward, like astronomy, physics, even navigation, it all changed.
It's like once you see where you actually fit in the grand scheme of things, then you can figure out how everything else works, right?
Exactly. And we see that same pattern with the idea of continental drift, early 20th century. Alfred Wegener proposed that the continents weren't fixed, but actually moving. And again, revolutionary idea, met with TONS of resistance initially.
I bet. I mean, it sounds crazy at first, right? Like, wait, you're saying the ground beneath our feet is constantly on the move?
Right. Must have been a total mind bender back then. But once people started accepting it, boom, our understanding of the planet changed completely. Earthquakes, volcanoes, how natural resources are distributed all made more sense.
Okay, so we've got the Earth circling the sun, the continents doing their own little drift. What other historical shifts show us this power of perspective?
Well, discovering the structure of DNA back in 1953, that was a game changer for sure. I mean, uncovering that double helix opened up entire fields of study we barely even knew existed before. Genetics, biotechnology, modern medicine as we know it, it all stems from that.
It's wild to think about how those historical shifts probably seemed kind of abstract back then, right?
Yeah.
But they've ended up having this huge, tangible impact on our lives today.
Absolutely. And if we zoom out to the big picture here, these examples show us that expanding our perspectives, even when it's uncomfortable, it's essential for progress. It makes you wonder, what assumptions are we clinging to today that might be holding us back?
Ooh, that's a good one. And it makes me think of that Stephen Covey quote, we see the world not as IT is, but as we are. It's like our own perceptions can kind of distort our view of reality.
Perfect example. And that's where those pesky cognitive biases come into play. You see, our brains are wired to take shortcuts, simplify things. It's natural. But to this, those biases can create blind spots, causing us to miss crucial information.
Okay, so how do we combat that? It's not like I can just reprogram my brain, right?
No need for brain rewiring, but just becoming aware of those biases, that's a powerful first step. Once you recognize them, you can start questioning your own assumptions. Is this really true, or am I just seeing what I want to see?
Okay, I get that. But let's make this practical. Say I'm a business leader. How could a limited perspective actually mess up my decisions? Can you give me an example?
Sure. Imagine you're only focused on customers in your immediate area, right? You might be completely missing a global market that's perfect for your product. Or maybe you dismiss a new tech trend as too out there. But what if that out there trend explodes? Your competitors jump on it, and suddenly you're left behind.
Ouch, yeah, that'd be a tough lesson to learn. So basically, sticking to our comfort zones might be the recipe for getting left behind.
It definitely limits your potential. But the good news is there's a growing body of research out there that explores exactly this. How our understanding of the world shifts and evolves. In fact, we have 3 books here today that dive deep into this.
3 whole books? Wow, you weren't kidding about this being a deep dive. It's fascinating that there are experts actively studying this, Like, I just learned the term paradigm shift, come from a book written over 50 years ago, and it's still so relevant today.
Right. It's crazy how enduring these ideas are. Thomas Kuhn, his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, that basically laid the groundwork for understanding how those big, sweeping changes in thinking occur, not just for individuals, but for whole fields of knowledge.
So it's not just about U.S. as individuals seeing more, but about how whole fields of knowledge transform over time.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
And the other books we have, they look at even bigger shifts, like how technology is driving globalization and changing the very nature of work itself.
And that's a perfect segue, don't you think? Because these shifts aren't just historical footnotes, right? The world is changing at warp speed right now. I mean, we're seeing massive demographic shifts.
And those demographic shifts, they're all tangled up with geopolitical realignments, economic upheavals.
Yeah, and we can't forget the corporate world, right? They're scrambling to keep up.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole technology side of things just constantly advancing. It's a lot to keep track of.
You say that again. And the key for leaders is that these shifts, they're not happening in isolation. They're all interconnected, like one change sets off another, and it leads to all these unpredictable consequences.
So it's kind of like a giant web, right? Where if you tug on one strand, the whole thing vibrates.
Exactly. Perfect analogy. And it really highlights why seeing the bigger picture is so crucial for leading effectively in today's world. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. So, okay, let's break down some of these current shifts one by one, just to get a clearer sense of what we're dealing with. First up, demographics. What's the quick snapshot?
Well, one thing that's fascinating is this contrast we're seeing. Some parts of the world are experiencing this youth boom, while others are rapidly aging.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And that has huge implications for everything. Workforce dynamics, strain on healthcare systems, all of that.
It makes sense, right? Like a younger population brings all this new energy, new ideas, but an aging population shifts priorities towards, well, things like elder care, retirement planning.
Yeah. Exactly. And those demographic changes, they ripple outwards, influencing everything from consumer trends to political landscapes.
It's like a domino effect, but on a global scale.
Precisely. Okay, so moving on. Next up is geopolitics. What's the headline there?
Well, give it to me straight.
Okay, well, we're seeing this rise of nationalism in many countries, which is leading to shifts in global alliances, right? And then, of course, you've got the war in Ukraine, which is, well, it's reshaping the geopolitical landscape in ways we're still trying to wrap our heads around, to be honest. It's a time of heightened uncertainty, wouldn't you say? A lot of volatility on the world stage.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like those traditional power structures, those old alliances, they're being challenged, and we've got this whole new set of dynamics to navigate.
Exactly. And all of those geopolitical shifts, they directly impact economic trends, which, speaking of, what's the economic outlook looking like these days?
Well, from what I've been reading, it seems like we're in this period of global economic divergence. Some regions are surging ahead economically while others are struggling to keep up. And then at the same time, there's this growing push for a more sustainable, regenerative economy, which kind of adds another layer of complexity to everything.
You're absolutely right. The global economy is in a state of flux, that's for sure. Those traditional models, they're being challenged by all these new approaches and priorities. It's a time of both risk and opportunity for businesses. You know what I mean?
Totally. It sounds like companies really need to be adaptable, like incredibly adaptable and forward-thinking if they want to thrive in this kind of environment.
Absolutely. They got to be on their toes. And that brings us to those corporate shifts we're seeing. I mean, industries are being disrupted left and right. Tech and e-commerce are booming, while traditional retail is, well, struggling to keep up. Then you've got the rise of electric vehicles, streaming services. Everything's changing. It's a period of immense transformation in the corporate world for sure.
It's like the pace of change is just accelerating, right? Businesses have to constantly innovate or they risk becoming obsolete. It's almost like a
race against time.
Exactly.
And underpinning all of this, of course, is the relentless pace of technological advancements. I mean, it's everywhere you look.
Yeah, we can't talk about this without mentioning technology, right? It's the elephant in the room. Artificial intelligence, automation, all these exponential technologies are evolving at an incredible rate. It's changing business models, job markets, even how we define competitive advantage these days.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? It's like we're witnessing this whole new industrial revolution unfolding right before our eyes, and it's all being driven by these transformative technologies. Leaders who can harness the power of these innovations while navigating the ethical implications, well, they're going to have a significant advantage going forward, that's for sure.
It's exciting, but also a little daunting, right? So if leaders aren't paying close attention to all these interconnected shifts, are they basically setting themselves up to be caught off guard?
I'd say so, yeah. But the good news is there are things we can do, practical steps leaders can take to expand their worldview and prepare for these global shifts, because it is possible to navigate this complexity effectively.
Okay, so give us the action plan. I'm ready to take notes. What's the first step? What do we do?
First and foremost, expand your networks globally. Go beyond your usual circles.
Okay, so move beyond networking just within my own city, my own country. I get that. But does that mean I need to start, like, racking up frequent flyer miles, attending conferences around the world?
Not necessarily. While in-person connections are great, technology has made it so much easier to connect with people globally from anywhere. You could join online communities focused on your industry, but with members from different countries, different backgrounds, you'd be amazed at the insights you can gain into how others are perceiving and responding to these global shifts.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
So virtual networking for the win. What about staying informed on all these global shifts? Any tips beyond just like endlessly scrolling through news feeds?
Definitely diversify your news sources. Don't just rely on what pops up in your social media feed. Actively seek out reputable international publications, think tanks, industry reports, even podcasts from around the world. Get a well-rounded perspective.
I love that. Expanding those information horizons, that's key. Okay, so we've got expanding our networks, diversifying our news sources. What's next on the action plan? What else can we do?
Partnering across borders, that's crucial in today's world. Look for opportunities to collaborate with organizations, maybe individuals from different sectors, different regions even. It's amazing what these partnerships can unlock.
So like maybe a tech company here in the US partners with a manufacturing firm in Asia to develop a new product. Or a nonprofit focused on education collaborates with a government agency in Africa to expand their reach. Something like that.
Exactly. Those are great examples. And these kinds of partnerships, they often lead to innovative solutions that just wouldn't be possible working in isolation. Plus, they help you tap into new markets, new perspectives, things you might not have considered otherwise.
I'm starting to see this less as overwhelming and more like, uncovering a treasure map, Like there's this whole world of opportunity out there just waiting to be explored through collaboration.
That's the spirit. And speaking of exploring new frontiers, don't underestimate the importance of embracing technological innovation. That's a big one.
Oh, for sure. And AI seems to be everywhere these days. It feels like every other headline is either AI is going to solve all our problems or AI is going to steal all our jobs.
Yeah.
It's hard to know what to believe sometimes.
Well, it is a powerful tool, but like any tool, it can be used for good or bad. The key for leaders is understanding how to leverage those technologies effectively and ethically.
So thinking about how AI can streamline operations, personalize customer experiences, even help identify emerging market trends, that kind of thing.
Exactly. It's about seeing AI not as a threat, but as a potential ally. And don't be afraid to experiment, to learn as you go. The world of technology is constantly evolving, so staying curious and adaptable is essential.
Got it. Embrace the power of tech, but keep an eye on those ethical implications. Okay, what's the final step in our action plan for expanding our worldview? Give me that last piece of advice.
Engage in strategic foresight. That's crucial for navigating this rapidly changing world.
Strategic foresight. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? Is it like gazing into a crystal ball and predicting the future?
No, it's not about predicting the future with certainty, but it is about thinking beyond the here and now, developing a clear vision for the future, or more specifically, exploring multiple possible futures.
So less about crystal balls and more about scenario planning.
Exactly. Think about those global trends we discussed, demographics, technology, geopolitics. Now consider how those might intersect and evolve over the next 5, 10, even 20 years.
So I might ask myself, what if this particular technology really takes off? Or what if this geopolitical conflict escalates? And then develop strategies based on those potential scenarios.
Exactly. By exploring different possibilities, you can identify potential risks and opportunities and develop strategies to navigate them. It's about being proactive, not reactive.
That makes a lot of sense. Instead of just reacting to whatever the world throws at us, we can actually try to shape the future we want to see.
That's the power of expanding your worldview. It's not just about gathering information, it's about using that information to make smarter, more strategic
And
decisions.
ultimately, to lead more effectively in a world that's constantly changing and throwing curveballs our way.
Precisely.
I'm really starting to see how all of this connects. It's fascinating.
It is, isn't it? It's all about seeing those connections, understanding the interplay of forces that are shaping our world.
It's like we're putting together this giant jigsaw puzzle, where each piece represents a different aspect of the global landscape.
And the more pieces we fit together, right, the clearer that bigger picture becomes. And that's what allows us to make those smart, strategic decisions that, effective leadership demands.
Yeah, this has really shifted my perspective on what it means to be a leader, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's not just about those traditional qualities we always hear about.
Right, right.
It's like there's this deeper level of uh, awareness, understanding, this ability to anticipate, adapt to a world that's, well, it never sits still, does it?
It really does flip the script on that traditional idea of leadership. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like charisma and decisiveness, those are still important, of course, but it's this deeper understanding that lets you anticipate those ripple effects, right? Adapt when things go sideways, make those decisions that really have an impact.
It's like having this panoramic view of the world. So you can see how all these seemingly separate trends and events, they're actually all connected.
They are, yeah.
So a decision you make over here could have consequences way over there,
Mhm.
or even years down the line.
Absolutely. And that's exactly why expanding your worldview is so vital for leaders today. I mean, we're living in a world that's, well, it's more complex, more interconnected, more volatile than ever before. Those old playbooks, those old assumptions, they just don't cut it anymore.
Sounds like the key is to be a lifelong learner, huh? Constantly searching for new information, new perspectives, and being willing to uh, adapt your understanding as the world changes. It's not about having all the answers, is it? It's about having the right questions and the curiosity to keep exploring.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's not even just about staying ahead of the curve. It's about creating the future we want to see. It's about understanding those forces at play and making choices that shape them in a positive direction.
It's inspiring when you put it like that. It's not just reacting, trying to keep up. It's about being proactive, shaping a better future.
It's moving from that mindset of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and collaboration. It's recognizing that we're all interconnected and, well, working together to create a world that works for everyone.
Thriving, not just surviving, right?
That's it.
And the best part, this is something every leader at any level can start doing today. It's making that choice to expand your awareness, your understanding, your impact on the world.
I love that.
So to our listener, are you ready to see more of the world and achieve more than you ever thought possible? Because we believe you are. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.